Today, we are diving into one of the most incredible power grabs in all of history. Seriously, it's the story of how an outsider, a guy with zero royal blood, manages to snatch the throne of Judea. And he does it by playing a civil war, charming a superpower, and just getting rid of every single person who stood in his way.
So, that's the big question, right? How does that even happen? Well, the answer isn't just about one guy's ambition, it's more like a blueprint for a total dynastic takeover. And it shows how the perfect storm of chaos at home and pressure from abroad can create this tiny little opening for someone smart enough and ruthless enough to take it.
So where do we even begin? Well, funny enough, the story doesn't really start with Herod. It starts with the royal family he's going to replace, the Hasmoneans. You see, they created the perfect opportunity for him by being exceptionally good at one thing: destroying themselves.
Okay, so when the Hasmonean queen Salome Alexandra died back in 76 BCE, she left her two sons in charge. And these guys, they couldn't have been more different. You've got Hyrcanus, the older one. He's the rightful heir, kind of cautious. Then you have Aristobulus, the younger brother, a real warrior type, ambitious and just hungry for power. It's a recipe for absolute disaster, and their rivalry, that was the spark that lit the whole thing on fire.
And man, when things went bad, they went bad fast. This timeline shows you just how quickly it all fell apart. The brothers' feud explodes into a full-blown civil war. But this wasn't just local chaos. It was basically a giant "come invade us" sign. And while they were busy fighting each other, the real power in the Mediterranean, Rome, was just watching. And in 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey the Great decides he's seen enough. He doesn't just intervene, he marches his army right into Jerusalem. And just like that, a century of Judean independence was over.
So this created a totally new reality. Judea became what's called a client state. What does that mean? Well, on paper, sure, it's independent. But in reality, Rome is pulling all the strings. To make a point, Rome propped up the weaker brother, Hyrcanus, as a high priest, but they made sure not to call him king. The real power wasn't in Jerusalem anymore. All the important decisions were being made in Rome. And this new world, with Rome calling all the shots, created the perfect environment for a totally new kind of political player to emerge. Someone who got that the old rules were out the window. And this is where our main character's family finally steps onto the stage.
So let's talk about Herod's family, because you got to understand their status. They were Idumeans. To the elites in Jerusalem, their family history, having been forcibly converted to Judaism a few generations back, meant they were always going to be outsiders. But Herod's father, a guy named Antipater, he was a political genius. He saw this not as a weakness, but as edge, and he made a brilliant move. He attached himself to the weaker Hasmonean brother, Hyrcanus, and made himself the guy Hyrcanus couldn't live without.
See, Antipater totally understood the new game. He knew the local fights were just noise. The real power was in Rome. So while everyone else was busy with their petty squabbles, he was building deep personal connections with the Roman heavy hitters. We're talking guys like Julius Caesar himself. He was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
And all that networking, it paid off, big time. In 47 BCE, Antipater cashed in some of that political capital and got his son a huge gig. Herod became governor of Galilee, and he was only about 25 years old. He immediately showed everyone he was ruthless and incredibly effective. And just like that, the outsider family was a major player.
But Herod's path wasn't a straight shot to the top, not even close. It actually involved a massive, dramatic fall from grace, and then an even crazier, almost unbelievable comeback.
At first, it looked like Herod couldn't be stopped. In 41 BCE, Mark Antony himself names him a tetrarch, which is basically a Roman-backed regional ruler. But just 1 year later, the whole thing comes crashing down. A rival Hasmonean prince, Antigonus, cuts a deal with Rome's #1 enemy, the Parthian Empire. And together, they launch a surprise invasion.
It all happened so fast. Herod was defeated, his own brother was captured, the Hasmoneans were back on the throne, and Herod, he was a wanted man, running for his life. As far as anyone could tell, it was over. Game over.
And this is where we see the guy's genius kick in. Okay, you've lost everything. What's the move? Well, for Herod, it was this incredibly bold gamble. He fled straight into the lion's den, to Rome itself. But look at his strategy. He doesn't show up begging for the throne. No, he very cleverly frames his request around Rome's interests. He publicly pleads with them to restore his old, loyal boss, Hyrcanus.
Now you have to think like a Roman senator here. For them, this was a no-brainer. They look at their options.
On one hand, you've got the Hasmoneans. They're weak, they cause tons of problems, and now they're in bed with our worst enemy. On the other hand, you've got this guy Herod, standing right in front of them. He's tough, he's effective, and he's proven he's loyal to Rome. For them, the only question that mattered was, who's going to be our guy in Judea? And in what has to be one of the most stunning political turnarounds ever, the Senate just completely ignores the old dynasty, looks at this fugitive, and declares him the new king of the Jews. It's just an incredible comeback story. Think about it. He went to Rome to ask for a crown for his old boss and walked out wearing it himself. But here's the thing. Winning a vote in the Roman Senate, that was the easy part. Herod was now a king on paper, but the actual kingdom was still controlled by his enemies. If he wanted that crown to mean anything, he was going to have to go back and take it.
That title wasn't a gift. It was a claim. It was basically a license from Rome to go wage a war. And a brutal, 3-year-long war for the future of Judea was about to begin.
So Herod returns, and he's got more than just a title. He's got a clear 4-step plan. Step 1, get a Roman army. Check. Step 2, take back the countryside, piece by methodical piece. Step 3, make a brilliant political move to shore up his legitimacy. And Step 4, take on the final boss, the heavily fortified capital, Jerusalem.
And that brilliant political move, it was his marriage to Mariamne, a Hasmonean princess. You can almost hear him thinking, if you can't be born a royal, marry one. It was his attempt to fuse his new Roman-backed power with the old, respected Hasmonean bloodline, an absolute masterstroke.
After 3 long, hard years of fighting, it all came down to this. In 37 BCE, the war reached its bloody climax at the walls of Jerusalem. Herod's army, with Roman support, laid siege to the city, and they eventually broke through, taking it street by bloody street.
So, the war was won, but Herod knew that to make sure his new dynasty was secure, he had to completely snuff out the old one. He had his rival, Antigonus, sent to his patron, Mark Antony, to be executed. It was a final, cold-blooded act of political strategy. You just can't leave a legitimate royal heir alive for your enemies to rally around. And with that final death, the Hasmonean dynasty, which had ruled for over a century, was officially over. A brand new one, the Herodian dynasty, was born. And this new ruling family owed everything, its power, its legitimacy, its entire existence, to its patrons back in Rome.
So, Herod did it. He outplayed his rivals, he got the backing of a superpower, and he conquered his own kingdom. But his victory leaves us with the biggest question of all, one that would hang over his entire reign. Could a king who took power by force, an outsider in the eyes of so many, ever truly win the hearts and minds of his people?